Tim here at Rick Jones Pianos with a baby grand piano called a Hallet Davis, built in 2008 in northeast China in the Dongbei factory. It's a factory whose pianos we're ourselves pretty familiar with because they produced pianos with a variety of different brand names on the front, one of which was August Hoffman, which we carried new in our inventory from, I think it was around 2000 until 2008 when the factory was purchased and we could no longer get those pianos anymore. So we're definitely familiar with it. They made pianos in several sizes, and I believe this was probably the smallest one that we ever had. This is only a 4'9", a baby grand. You might call it a petite baby grand because it's shorter than 5 feet. Most of the August Hoffman models that we got in were the slightly larger 5-foot model, 152, which is the length of the piano in centimeters. This one's a 146, so it's even more compact than most of the baby grand August Hoffmans we got. But the whole story about the different names, as I recall, Dongbei purchased the equipment and designs of an old Swedish company called Nordiska. Nordiska themselves might have had control of the August Hoffman name because that was another old Swedish company. And along the way, they also purchased or got the rights to a number of other names that they would put on the front of the pianos, including Hallet Davis, which was an old piano company based in Boston, Massachusetts, and which, like so many other brand names of piano, passed through many hands before being passed through many hands amongst American companies before being passed off to overseas factories. And different dealers will choose different names according to dealers of new pianos, I mean, according to what they believe will be suitable for their target customer. But we acquired this piano because we're familiar with the inside of the piano. Dongbei pianos were, in our opinion, really well designed, really well put together, particularly amongst economically made pianos. We thought they were always a really good value with a nice full sound and a responsive feel. This one's no exception. We sold a lot of pianos like this new back in the 2000s, which we would end up getting back on trade from people, customers taking advantage of our lifetime 100% trade-up guarantee. And the whole deal with that, which we still have to this day and which applies to anything we sell, in addition to our 10-year warranty, all parts and labor. So long as you make sure you have the piano in tune twice a year by a professional technician, and you keep it away from extremes of humidity, so moderate, stable humidity, especially crucial for the wooden components of a piano. You can come back whenever you wish and trade in the piano for precisely the instrument sales price, and that's what many people over the years did with the August Hoffmans and other Dongbei-made pianos that they purchased from us. We had some Storia and Clarks too, if I remember correctly. They got started with a little modest but well-made baby grand. Got started with lessons, continued practicing, and eventually a student, adult or child, would improve to the point where the teacher would recommend upgrading to a substantially nicer, most likely larger piano in their inventory. And that's how we got a lot of these pianos back over the years. They were doing their job, getting students started on the right track, and then it'll be people's first foray into the world of grand pianos. And this one is equipped to do the same for you if you wish. We've regulated the action on this piano like we would any piano in our inventory, so it's playing evenly and smoothly across the keyboard, and so there's no surprises going from note to note. That's one of the things most important to piano teachers. They don't want their students to be frustrated at home practicing on a piano where the keys don't all work correctly or even at all. Teachers will want everything to be even and consistent with no surprises, so that the students moving their fingers to play the keys are focusing more on learning how to play the piano than the problems with the piano itself. And that's why teachers trust us and recommend their students to us. So it's a piano that it was made in around 2008. I think one of the last years they made these models. It has a beautiful polished ebony finish, and from the factory it has a slow close fall board mechanism, which as I'm speaking is still closing. It's very slow on this. There it goes, it finally closed. That's to prevent this normally heavy piece of wood from accidentally slamming down on someone's fingers, especially children who are physically active in the house, running around the house while maybe knocking things over. We often get questions from parents about whether such and such piano has a slow close fall board key cover. Rest assured this piano has it, and I don't think anyone's going to be hurting themselves on this, at least not so easily. You got plenty of time to move your fingers out of the way. So that's built in from the factory. It's otherwise all original. It didn't require a whole lot of work to bring it back up to speed. These pianos are always very easy for us to work on. They're very predictable and serviceable. And I would add it has a really substantial tone for such a small piano. Shorter than 5 feet. That's, in my opinion, pretty good for the bass. It's, well, I'll say many manufacturers struggle to make such a small piano sound good because not only is the soundboard area smaller, the strings, all of the strings have to be shorter, and it affects the bass strings proportionally more adversely because bass strings benefit from being longer and thinner, so they vibrate with more clarity of sound. But there's all sorts of little tricks of design that different manufacturers can take advantage of to try to get the most out of a limited string. And I'm always really pleasantly surprised at how well Dongbei made pianos sound, especially in the lower notes. It's more powerful than you would expect from such a small piano. So it does have a wide musical range, wider than you would expect from such a small piano. I'll rate the tone of this piano a 6 on a scale from 1 to 10, from mellow to bright. That means it's a bright sounding piano. I think it's a little bit on the bright side. Not that it's incapable of a softer sound, it's just maybe a bit more intense and especially delicate in the treble if you play quietly. The touch, I think, is on the firm side. There's more than the average amount of resistance in these keys. Accordingly, I'll give it a 6 on the scale from 1 to 10, from light to firm. I know many teachers prefer their students to practice on that, so they're better prepared for the more massive feel of whatever piano they have in their teaching studio, which oftentimes grands do feel more substantial, certain brands of grands especially. So a student's going to be better prepared for that feel. And then finally, the piano does have a middle pedal sostenuto, which a lot of more entry-level grands don't have, but this one does. You hold down notes on the keyboard, depress the middle pedal, and it only activates the dampers for the notes that you pre-selected. So nothing else gets sustained. It just, when you remove your fingers from the key, the note sound stops, except for the ones that you have selected before. It's like having a third hand holding down notes on the keyboard for you. So please stop by, try this out for yourself. You will be welcome to play this or anything else in their inventory. But if you can't make it, you can always give us a phone call or send us an email if you have any questions. Thanks.